Hey, what's up everybody? Kyle Buckland here with the Artful Souls. I'll do a quick, just a primary palette demonstration here on a little 8x10 canvas. This is acrylic paint, and so because I'm working outside with my acrylic paint, I've got my my spray bottle here. So I'm going to spray this paint to keep it from drying out on me. It's important when you're working outside with acrylics. I just got a couple brushes, like a number 4 flat, a number 4, this is probably number 6 flat, a number 4 bright, and then I've got a number 6 round, and like another round that's really tiny. So just a very simple, I just wanted to do a very simple demonstration here to show you how you don't have to get real complicated with things. You don't have to have a lot of supplies, and you don't have to have a lot of paint. This is just permanent crimson, permanent yellow light, and ultramarine blue, and we're just painting a simple scene, a little scene in my backyard. So not straying very far from home right now, and found all kinds of beautiful things to paint right in the backyard. So just like we normally do, we're just going to start with a few simple lines here to kind of give us an idea of what we're up to. And what I'm really attracted to is this backlighting of this tree. So I'm going to put this main tree in the center of the canvas, but not directly in the center. So I'm going to have it off to the right just a little bit, and having it lean over to the left a little bit as we go. And then we get this nice shadow that kind of comes out a little bit to the left here. So we've got another shadow right here, and then a shadow here. So we've got this already starting to have this radiating line design stem here. So we've got these lines all kind of pointing in, almost like the wheels, the spokes on a bicycle wheel. And that's going to set up a nice design. Now I've got another tree over here to the left. It's going to do the same thing. It's leaning out and away from this tree. So I'm going to kind of exaggerate that movement a little bit. And then we've got a tree over to the right that's not really in the picture, but I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to move it over just a little bit just to create some interest. So remember, you can move things around in your picture. So I'm going to start with a nice purple. And so this is going to give us a real strong purple because of this crimson creates a nice rich purple. So I'm going to add a touch of yellow just to tone it down just a little bit. And a little bit of white so we can see what we're doing. We don't want this to be super dark because there's a lot of reflected light bouncing around in a scene like this. It's going to look really dark when we first put it on because it's contrasted against the white of the canvas. But once we get more colors in there, we'll see that it actually has a nice glow to it. And I'm using this in the same purple. I'm going to come out here with this shadow and just draw where that shadow comes out. Now remember, shadows are going to stretch out and get a little wider as they come towards us. I'm going to do the same color for this tree too. So all 3 trees are going to have the same nice purple color. It's going to kind of unify them a little bit. And I want to tie them in with some dark shadows along the base. If we can tie in our big dark shape in the beginning, that's going to help the design. So there's also some dark purple back here in these bushes. I'm going to kind of sketch it in. Now, very quickly, let's just move on to this dark green in the background. So a little of this permanent yellow light, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of that purple. And we're just going to just real simply lay in this darker green here. And again, we want it dark, but we don't want it black. We don't want it so dark that it kills all the light in the picture. It's a lot of nice light bouncing around in a scene like this. And there are different areas in this, different types of green back here, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to mass in our big shadowed area with this same green. We can come back and break it up as we go. And let's add some of that dark green to our shadow down here because it is on green grass. So we masked it in with the purple. Now we're adding some of these darker greens. We'll have a couple little shadows that come out there. Now, just as simply, we want to move on. Let's go ahead and hit the light areas. So we started with our shadows. Now let's hit some of this nice light green. So we've got this permanent yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine to it. is going to give us a nice light green. And I just want to do this. This is one thing I want to keep in mind with this painting is simplicity. I want very simply stated tones, and I don't want a lot of complicated brushwork. We just want some simple values. So I'm using the same light green for these little areas in here where the sunlight's hitting. Now, we've got some light green up in here where some sunlight's coming over the top. So let's go ahead and pop in some of that with this same light green. Think of this as a little poem. So you know how in poetry you get a lot of weight out of just a few little words. That's what we want in this scene. We want just little bits of little simply stated tones. Now, I'm going to come back with some pink. So this crimson and a little bit of white. I don't want it too light, but I want it a little bit lighter than my dark here, and I'm going to pop that in down here by the bottom because there's a lot of reflected light in these trees. We can even warm it up. Let's do a little bit of orange. So a little bit of permanent yellow light and a little bit of crimson. And we have to make sure this is the right value, so I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. Catching that reflected light in there is nice. Now, again, keeping things nice and simple. Let's get some dark purple and really push some darks back in here in the back. The light's coming from behind these trees, but it's also slightly over to the right a little bit. So what we're going to get is just a little bit of edge lighting right along the right side of some of these trees. So by having a nice little dark spot right in here, it's going to help contrast that nicely with that little bit of edge lighting. And we can have some pure color in here. Let's have a nice dark blue back in there. So we can play with color as long as our values are correct. So this is going to be our darker value, but we want some nice color in there. Now let's do the same thing with the shadow in the foreground. Let's add some blue to it, because it's flat and it's catching a lot of that blue light from the sky. So again, we want this to be a similar value to what we already have down, so not too dark and not too light. And then there are some other little areas of shadow out in here. Just going to pop them in, just a suggestion. Don't work on any one area too long. When you're doing a little simple study like this, you want to keep things nice and light and fresh and spontaneous. Now, I've got a little tiny brush here. We're going to hit some of this nice light yellow, add a little bit of this crimson to it, a little bit of white. We're going to get a nice, real nice light creamy tone, sort of an orange, but with a lot of white in it. We want to come right up along the edge of this. And it doesn't have to be a solid line, it can be broken in little places. And it doesn't have to be all the same color. We can have it be a little warmer in spots. Over here we'll maybe do this one just a little warmer. Just want it to be light enough that it kind of stands out against that. And then there's some little places down here that are catching some little bits of sunlight. So we'll go ahead, while we have that lighter tone on our brush, we'll go ahead and brush in some little highlights down here along the grass. Now this tree is bent over to the right, so it's actually catching some light on the left side. Put a little bit of light on that left side there. While we've got this little brush, I'm going to do some real light green touches right up in here, where the sun is just beaming down over this hillside and catching some of these little leaves. But notice I'm not getting these all over the place. I'm staying within the realm of where the sunlight is. So we grade into the light. So we might have a couple little spots where it sticks out over the dark, but we don't want it too light, so we can get a little bit of a darker green, still a light green, but not quite as light as what we were just using. And we can pop that in a couple little places over here in front of our darks, just to create some push and pull. Now we can create some little accents on these trees. So we're going to take a real dark color, so almost a pure purple with that crimson and that ultramarine blue, and we come back into some of these trees here where this lighter tone is, and just get some little descriptive touches in there. A lot of times you'll see these little dark shadows right around the base of a tree too, where the root kind of creates a nice dark. There might be some spots around the base here where there's some dirt and there's some shadows under some rocks. So just creating a little bit of play. I want to bring out a few branches. So there are some branches up higher in the tree. So I'm just going to look up there and I'm going to use them as my sort of my guide to go along here. And then I'm just going to pop them in real quick. Just simple. If you can get it in 1 or 2 brush strokes, great. It's so easy to overwork these types of scenes. It's a nice warm green reflected light hitting up underneath of these branches. So I'm going to mix up a nice green, but I'm going to tone it down with my red. Just a little bit there where it comes out of the tree. I'm going to hit some pure yellow and a little bit of white to get a real nice yellow highlight color. And right around the base of this tree, I'm going to play up some little touches. It's going to draw your eye into this area, which is sort of the center of interest here. And we've got some nice descriptive, some little flowers coming up. Again, you might have to spray your paint to keep it from drying out. So we've got some nice descriptive brush strokes here. Some little flowers that are coming up and catching the light. They're silhouetted against that dark, so it's nice. We can even make some over here. They're not over there, but I like the way that looks, so I'm going to move some over there. Creates a nice transition from that light into that dark there. Again, I don't want these trees to be too dark, so add a little bit of light there. Now there's a nice bit of pure yellow in little spots down here, little dandelions. This is going to give us a feeling of the time of year it is. So everybody's going to associate little dandelions with spring. So little touches of pure yellow. And I don't want too many of these. A couple look great, and then too many, and we've got too many spots going on. So just a couple in there. There's also a nice light green along the edge of this tree here where there's some moss catching some sunlight. Put that in there. And I want to get the shadow of these tree branches. So right here we can have sort of shadow coming off. That's just that blue color. These shadows go different ways, so just pay attention to that. And let's get some nice pink. There's some nice pink flowers up in there. I don't know if you can see them in the reference photo or not, but they're little, some kind of clover or little wildflowers catching light. And they're over on the left, but I'm going to move them in towards the center, right in around this tree here. And then maybe we'll just have a few over here, over to the left. I've got some little light branches coming down, catching catching some light. So same color that we were using for the sunlight on the edge of the tree, we can use for those little branches. I think I'm going to take this color and just hit a little bit of sunlight on the top of this branch. Just in a few little places. And see, because we didn't go completely light with our light green, we can have a little bit of play here where take a really light green and pop it in some places, and it just gives it just an extra feeling of glowing sunlight in there. It's really adding to this light and airy quality of this piece. Now I want to get an orange. Just a nice clean orange color here, and place it right between my shadows and my sunlit part of my grass, sort of like a little transition tone. So this is a value that's a little lighter than the shadow, but a little darker than the sunlit areas of the grass, and it just transitions your eye from the dark shadow to the lighter sunlit parts of the grass there. It's just right along the edge, and it doesn't have to be everywhere. It could just be in a few little spots. I'm going to take some dark here and come back and draw around these trees to push just a little bit. And see, by pushing this dark, what we actually do is we create a better feeling of sunlight in the sunlit areas. So remember, sometimes when you want to make an area lighter, you can make other areas around it darker, and that'll do the same thing. You don't always have to push the lights to make the light light. You can push the darks. And just a couple little branches here, they don't even really have to be connected to anything, just to suggest some little areas that are catching sunlight here. And take a little contour line right up the side of this tree. Sometimes I like it when I have this glowing light in these trees. It's nice to come and kind of outline it just a little bit with a contour line. It gives it a little bit of character. And I want to mass together a little bit more of this sunlit part of this green down here. It's a little bit too broken up. Remember, I said I want to keep things nice and simple, nice and clean. Sometimes coming back and massing together some areas that are broken up, so painting more broadly into those areas helps that. You'll see this a lot too in trees. You'll see one main tree that's a little bit bigger, and then several trees around it that come up and they kind of lean out to either side of it. That's a nice effect. It gives a very natural and organic look to your painting. This happens a lot because trees are very respectful of one another, and they try not to block each other's sunlight. So you'll see it a lot of times. You'll see this main tree coming up, and then these other trees will grow around it, and then they'll lean out different ways to get out of the way of the big one. We can learn a lot from trees if we pay attention. A little bit of dark green in here. A little bit of dark green kind of tying together some of these shapes along the bottom of these trees. And I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's put a little butterfly in there. Butterfly or two. Especially this time of year. Love painting little butterflies into my paintings. Just a little bit of extra detail. Give your eyes something to latch onto up here. Let's do a couple. You know what we should probably do? Probably do 3 because 3 is a good number. We can have just one, just be a little bit up there. And I'm going to come back in. I'm almost done now. So see, I said we really want to keep things simple. This is a lesson in simplicity and not overworking things. This is a real simple scene, and it requires a simple treatment. Get some of this dark again and define this branch with this dark. Take your time at this stage. Slow down a little bit, back up from the painting, see what it needs, and don't get overwhelmed and start just painting for the sake of putting paint on the canvas. You want to make sure that every time your brush touches the canvas, it's doing it for a reason. If you find yourself just aimlessly just painting all over the place and not really understanding why you're putting down the brush strokes that you're putting down, it's probably time to stop and reassess. It's a good time to step back from your work. Look at it from a few feet back. If you're working on a large canvas, you can step way back from it. An 8x10, you know, this is a little canvas. You can step a few feet back from it, see how it looks. Some of that green reflected light right back in the underside of these trees. Just little slightest touches of green. All that green color bounces off of the grass and bounces up into the actual tree. We're getting really close now, so remember, you don't have to set out and paint all day long to get a nice painting. If you have a clear vision of what you want your piece to look like, and you have a good idea of you know, what it is you're painting, and you don't pick anything too complicated to paint, you really don't have to spend very long to get a nice painting. And in fact, a lot of times some of the nicest pieces come out very easily. That's what we should be aiming for. I actually painted another painting before this. I was working on a demo, and I thought it was going to be the demo for today. It was another still life, and I just completely bombed. I completely overworked it, and I scraped it out, and I'd worked about 2 hours on it, and it just wasn't coming together like I wanted it to. And a lot of times what I'll do then is I'll just stop and clean off my brushes, clean off my palette, and lay out some more paint and pick a different subject matter and go at it again, and use the lesson and keep that in mind, that I really don't want to overwork things. So a lot of times I get a really nice painting the second time around. Usually the paintings that I do after the ones that I mess up are some of the nicest little pieces. And to be honest, it drives me crazy when I can't get a painting to look like I want it to. So I've always been the type to get right back at it. So there's a lesson there. Don't get discouraged if, you know, I've been painting for 20 years and I still have times when I can't get the paint to do what I want it to. But it doesn't mean you have to stop. It just means you might have picked a wrong subject matter, or just something wasn't right about the lighting, or something like that. And you always learn something from those paintings too. So so when that happens, just remain calm, you know, and clean up your stuff. And if you feel like it, go at it again with some fresh eyes. Maybe pick a different subject matter. Creating a little bit more variety in the brush strokes right up in here. And I'm going to sign it, call it quits. And this is, you know, this is in sync with this type of subject matter. It's a very fresh, clean type of morning. The light is very fresh and crisp, so I don't want anything that's heavy or overworked. I want something nice and clean and crisp like this. And I think I'll call it quits right there. Put a signature on it. Then I usually step back, and there might be a couple little tiny things I do, but not a lot. So I hope everybody's learning from the videos and is finding time to get out and push some paint around. It's a beautiful time of the year here in the eastern United States. We're getting into springtime here. You know, find some things to get out and paint. You don't have to go far. This is a good lesson in that. This is right in my backyard. So a lot of times some of the most beautiful scenes are right under our noses, and it just takes looking for them to see them. So I hope you learned a lot from this demo, and I look forward to bringing you more videos. You can check out my Patreon page in the description below. There's a link to my Patreon page if you like these videos. I've got more videos over there on Patreon, including some product recommendations and some book recommendations, and then some additional demos and exercises and that sort of thing. I just did a video about palette knife techniques on there, so I've been painting with a palette knife a little bit here in the last few, and I did a video on that. So go on there and check that out, and also my website's down there too, where I've got work available for purchase. So hope you're doing well, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon at the next video.